Time now for Morning Rounds. Joining us are CBS News Chief Medical Correspondent Dr. John LaPook and CBS News contributor Dr. Holly Phillips. First up this week, progress in the eternal search for youth. 3 new studies found that blood from young mice can reverse symptoms of aging in older mice. Elaine Quijano talked to some of the scientists.
Researchers at Harvard's Stem Cell Institute may have unlocked the secret to reversing aging in the muscles and brains of old mice. It's a protein called GDF11, and it's abundant in young mice but lacking in older ones. Amy Wagers has been studying GDF11.
The aged animals who were provided with additional GDF11 actually could recover from muscle injury more quickly. They could pull harder on a metal bar, sort of like a pull-up. And they could run for a longer time period, closer to what younger mice can do.
The protein also led to changes in the mice's brains. The colored areas show the formation of new blood vessels in the brain of an older mouse, increasing the amount of blood flow to more closely resemble the brain of a younger mouse. Lee Rubin led the brain research.
This suggests that it will be possible under certain conditions to improve cognition in people with senile dementia or Alzheimer's disease.
Wow, these are amazing possibilities here, John. Is this a real breakthrough?
Breakthrough, it's fascinating, but we're talking about baby steps and baby mice steps at that. Okay, it's not necessarily people, but we're talking about for the very first time understanding the molecular biology of aging. And I think if you had said 10 years ago we're going to have something that can decrease aging or we can reverse aging, we would have said this is P.T. Barnum, a sucker is born every second. But I actually think we're now getting to the point it could actually be feasible.
Even in this early stage, are there any risks they're already looking at?
Well, this is a growth factor, and whenever you give somebody a growth factor, then you worry about abnormal growth, tumors, cancers. So far, they've been looking for it in the mice, and they haven't seen it.
So are the researchers actually thinking about trying this in humans?
They talk about it kind of vaguely. They say maybe there'll be human trials within 5 years. But again, we have these Methuselah mice, perhaps, but we're a long ways from being able to do that in humans.
Also this week, Vermont Governor Peter Shumlin signed a bill mandating labeling of genetically modified foods. Vermont is the first state to do so, but many other states are also working on plans to require GMO labels. So what do the labels in Vermont actually say, Holly?
Well, there are going to be 3 different ways they can be written, but ultimately it's going to go on any food products that use genetically modified plants in them. Now, even though Vermont is the first state to do it, 64 countries worldwide already do it. And ultimately, what genetic modification means is that genes have either been introduced or removed from plants as they're farmed to give them certain characteristics. Often it's to make them more resistant to insects so that we require fewer pesticides. Sometimes it's to give them a specific color or flavor, but it's changing them in some way using genes.
How much of our food, Holly, is actually genetically modified?
Anthony, actually this was news to me, almost all of it. The vast majority of the soy, cotton, and corn that we consume is genetically modified in some way on our store shelves.
I don't think it would be surprising that most people would support this decision, but how is the food industry responding?
You know, they're not happy about it. The bottom line is we have the right to know how our food is made and what's in it. So it's very hard, I think, to make a cogent argument against labeling and telling people what we're buying. The food industry is worried that there might be a negative stigma. If there is a big GMO label on food, people might think that it infers danger. There have not been large studies that show there's any harm to us from genetically modifying foods. Some people argue we haven't proven that they are completely safe. But I think the real focus is just that we need to have complete transparency and we should know what we're consuming.
Right. A Mississippi high school junior scored a major success this week when the Coca-Cola company announced it would remove brominated vegetable oil from its Powerade drinks. The oil contains bromine, an element found in flame retardants. It's banned in Europe and Japan. The New York Times reports 17-year-old Sarah Kavanaugh started an online petition in 2012 to get PepsiCo to remove the ingredient from Gatorade. She then launched a second campaign focused on Powerade and gathered almost 60,000 signatures. Coca-Cola says it will eliminate brominated vegetable oil from all of its drinks by the end of the year.
Well, many parents let toddlers play with touchscreen devices, believing that electronic games and apps will help their children learn. But new research presented this week at the annual meeting of the Pediatric Academy Societies might make parents think twice before they hand over the smartphone. John, every time we do one of these, my child is deprived of one more thing, anything related to toddlers. So tell me, what does this study actually say?
Well, the American Academy of Pediatrics discourages screen use under the age of 2. So these people went out and said, we're going to look at 65 families, we're going to give them questionnaires, we're going to find out what's the reality. And it turns out that about 70% of those families, kids under the age of 3, were using these touch screens, and the average age at first use was about 11 months.
Wow. Obviously, Holly, a lot of parents think this is just fine. I mean, but what's going on here?
Right. Well, the bottom line is, again, most families used them at very young ages, but ultimately there was no educational benefit. 60% of the parents who gave their kids the devices felt like they were learning something from them, but ultimately, whether they were educational games or not, they were not increasing their verbal skills or really teaching them anything. Now, but I do feel that there should be a disclosure going across the bottom of the screen right now. Dr. Holly's kids use touchscreen devices. It helps us survive airports, sometimes restaurants, doctors' offices. But I do think it's just to understand that these devices are fun for the kids, probably not tremendously harmful, but the only thing that educates our kids is us.
Right.
It's about talking to your kids, reading to them, and that's truly what teaches them.
I do think for a lot of parents, though, it is a matter of survival.
Yes.
Finally, actress Valerie Harper was diagnosed with brain cancer more than a year ago, and she was told she might only live a few months more. But this week, she testified before Congress about the need for increased cancer research funding.
Today, I am a year and 4 months past my expiration date. And while I won't pretend to understand the federal budget, I do know research dollars equal lives.
It's great to see that she's still with us. It is, and I got it. This strikes home very personally for me because I've had several patients who have died of brain cancer, and we've all had patients die of cancer, physicians. And how many times do we have to say it? We need more research dollars. We need more research dollars. And oh, by the way, we need more research dollars. I mean, how many times do we have to say it?
That's really what translates into, as Valerie just said it, saving lives.
Dr. John LaPook, Dr. Holly Phillips, thank you both.